Issues at hand on Family TV, enriching lives.
This is Church of Uganda Family TV and you are watching Issues at Hand this Monday. Thank you for joining us, and Issues at Hand is a program where we get to discuss different issues that are happening in our society so that we can find a resolution towards them and have a better community and society. And we are glad once again to have you join us today. Let's get into the thick of it with me, Bruno Edgard, and my guest today is Mr. Mwamula Juma, who is a board member of the National Organization of Trade Unions, and he's a General Secretary, Uganda Private Teachers Union. Thank you for joining us on Issues at Hand today.
Thank you so much, my brother. Warm greetings to the viewers out there and the nation at large.
Fantastic. And today we are looking at the state of workers and their rights, particularly when it comes to the question of workers and National Organization of Trade Unions. But to understand this better, my guest, what is the mandate of the National Organization of Trade Unions? Help us understand what NOTU does and how that pertains to us as workers.
Thank you so much again, and thank you to our viewers out there. NOTU is the National Organization of Trade Unions. It is a federation of workers in the country. First of all, I need to draw the basic understanding that in the world of work, we have about 3 significant players. There is this person who gives in his labor to earn a bread, but you're giving in your labor to the owner of capital, so that one is called a worker. Then there is also that person who establishes the work, the owner of capital himself, who in this case we can call the employer. And then normally we do have the government that ensures that there is mutual relations between the two parties. So naturally, between the worker and the employer, a worker is normally weaker, is a weaker category in terms of bargaining and determining affairs at a workplace. So that in itself, because of the aspiration to have a voice from this weak person to ensure that his aspirations are also met, we ask, there is a principle that requires them to join up in their feeble beings. They come together such that they can eventually make a solid bigger voice, which can fairly contest the bigger voice of the owner of capital. So at the level of a workplace, when workers come together, they come together under what we call a trade union. And now that one is a sector-based organization which voices aspirations of workers. But because the principle is join up to make sure that you raise a bigger voice, there are such issues that are really bigger that as people in a certain workplace you cannot handle. As people in a certain sector, you may be overwhelmed. So therefore, you even need the voice and the collective action and well-wish of other people from other groupings. So eventually, us as workers from different sectors, from different fields of work, come together. Journalists come, teachers come, lawyers come, and so on and so forth. And at that level, we join up into what we call a federation. Federation, which is a bigger grouping of workers from different categories of work. So NOTU National Organization is at a level of a national federation. It is a body that enjoins workers from different sectors of workplaces. Myself, when I am in NOTU, I go there from the background of teachers in private schools. But when we are into NOTU family, we also find our colleagues from government schools, we find our colleagues from local government, we find our colleagues, you people from the media, and so on and so forth. So again, at that level of NOTU, we become one family. And therefore, what relates to somebody in the media fraternity, then it becomes our issue. For us all to rise up and say, how do we support this brother? How do we support this sister? So that is essentially how the labor unions or the federation, like National Organization of Trade Union, really do work.
So in terms of, thank you for taking us through that and helping us understand that the trade union is a bigger voice, so that the workers can have more leverage as far as the relationship between the worker and the owner of capital is concerned.
Very right.
But then the question is now who is eligible to subscribe to NOTU? Like you have said, there are workers from all fields and all sectors. So who is eligible to be under the trade union that is NOTU, and how does one subscribe to NOTU?
Now, every person who is giving in his labor is eligible and has the right to join, to be part of NOTU family. The laws of Uganda that relate to workers permit, first of all, even from the national constitution, it gives us a right to belong to an association, to belong to a trade union of your own choice. So for as long as you are at workplace, it is important for you to realize that at one time you could have a challenge that come and directly relate to your work. It could be issues of unfair treatment, maybe terminations, maybe very miserable payments, maybe any form of harassment at work, and so on and so forth. So the safeguard that you always have when you are in such environment, when you are really giving in your labor, is a trade union. That is now in terms of fostering your rights. But it is also in terms of creating other opportunities beyond the horizons of your own workplaces. For us in trade union, we have that bigger family whereby you then benefit from the advantage of interactions, advantage of exchanges, learning from each other, networking, and so on, the social capital that you build. So it is not necessarily about fostering for your interests of salaries and so on and so forth, but that bigger benefit. Therefore, if you are at workplace and you realize that you could have you need to grow beyond where you are, then the answer is a trade union. Now, once you are a member of a trade union, and that trade union is subscribed to National Organization of Trade Unions, NOTU, then you are automatically a member of NOTU. So in NOTU, you do not subscribe there as an individual that me, Mwamula, Juma, want to belong to NOTU and therefore I'm going to seek membership. No. But you rather go through a union that is, NOTU is a member organization of organizations. It enjoins organizations. So today it has 34 trade unions under it. But under those 34, different categories of workers now belong to you, to NOTU through those 34. As in private education sector, we go through Uganda Private Teachers Union, and for as long as we enroll with Uganda Private Teachers Union, we are automatically members of National Organization of Trade Unions. Our colleagues in market, border industry, and so on and so forth go through their respective unions. We have Markets Workers Union, we have Transport and Amalgamated Workers Union, where borders, taxis, and all those people related to transport sector relate. So when you are a member of such a body, and that body is a member of NOTU, then automatically you are a family person or a family member of NOTU. And whatever happens to you, first of all, the immediate appeal is your own union, your own organization. If you have a challenge or if you have an aspiration that you're looking forward to, then your very immediate contact is your own union. But beyond that, you also have the bigger advantage at level of NOTU, where even when your union is overwhelmed or somehow cannot handle or requires extra efforts, then the bigger family of NOTU, which brings together lawyers, which brings together medics and all other practitioners in the world of work, can be there to really embrace and give you all the cordial support that you could be desiring at a time.
All right, fantastic. That's why it's good to come from a basis of knowing who is under NOTU and who is eligible to join NOTU. Now, you mentioned that under National Organization of Trade Unions, there are a lot of trade unions that fall under that umbrella.
Sure.
And of recent, especially this year, we have seen a strike from allied health professionals. We've seen a strike from Uganda National Teachers Union, and we are also seeing a strike from the local government workers under Uganda Local Government Workers Union. Do these unions fall under National Organization of Trade Unions? And if so, it seems like NOTU has been a bit quiet on these matters of these strikes. NOTU has not come out to pronounce themselves on these strikes and on where they stand as far as what some of these organizations wanted. So what is NOTU doing to support the rights of these workers who are obviously striking for things like poor pay and they want salary increment?
Maybe first is the other categories of professions who you have been talking about and asking as to whether they are members of NOTU or not. The nurses, you talked about the allied health professionals and others. First of all, allied health professional is not a trade union. It is possibly an association of health workers at that level. And therefore, whatever they were doing is a cause that we can associate ourselves in goodwill with, but it's not something that would have direct responsibility over. But for example, Uganda Nurses and the Midwives Union is a member organization of NOTU, and we do recall that at one time it also wanted to go into a strike, but somehow called it off. And then these other unions. So for us as trade unions, for us as NOTU,
Issues at hand on Family TV, enriching lives.
Issues at Hand continues here on Church of Uganda Family TV. By the way, if you want to get in touch with us and you want to be part of this conversation, please send us a WhatsApp message on our WhatsApp number. That's 0787 447 684. Again, that's 0787 447 684. And we shall duly read out your comments, and I know our guest will respond to your queries as well. Now, my guest, just to reiterate, is Mr. Mwamula Juma, who is a board member of National Organization of Trade Unions and the General Secretary of Uganda Private Teachers Union. Now, you are still telling us about how the unions that, whether UNATU and Uganda Local Government Workers Union are under NOTU, and what NOTU was doing was these trade unions were embarking on their strikes.
Yeah, UNATU are Uganda Local Government Workers Union, and so many others. I say they are 34 in number, are members of National Organization of Trade Unions. Maybe the other one category that you talked about that is not directly our member is the allied professionals. Health profession. That one is not a union yet, and therefore it is not with us as labor unions. And that in itself, by the way, give it some limitation, because the laws of Uganda that give the benefit of workers to do what we call negotiation and collective bargaining, particularly relate to trade unions. And indeed, at the Ministry of Public Service, for the colleagues working with the government, there is even a framework called the Public Service Negotiating Council that brings together all workers organized under trade unions to debate issues of their interest and have a common agreement. So people who are in associations and so on and so forth sometimes do miss out on that, and that is why we're always making a daily and regular call for workers wherever they are to join trade unions of their sector. So if you know you are in the health practice, at least we have Uganda Medical Workers Union, we do have Uganda Nurses and Midwives Union. You can be part of any one of those, because those ones are direct members of the other framework I talked about at Ministry of Public Service, and so your voices, your needs can always be heard at that. Now, what has not been doing, especially at a time when the nurses somehow went into a strike, teachers went into a strike, and now local government is on a strike. I told you earlier that we are organized in such a way that from an individual person, you belong to a union. And now from a union, the union belongs to a federation, which is NOTU. Even NOTU 6 other attachments until when we connect to ILO, because you know ILO as a UN
International Labour Organization.
It is that arm that really relates to workers. So that framework goes up to that level of UN belonging. As workers, we are partnered and we are the owners of the ILO. But how we operate is in such a way that when any issue, for example, it is in the journalist sector and it is about Family TV, we will give an opportunity to the leadership at Family TV to handle. Until when there is evidence that they are overwhelmed is now when we set to another stage. So there are those strikes and industrial action that have been sanctioned by individual unions, and to the assessment of the leadership of NOTU, we still think that things are still under their control. Like for example, our colleagues, the UNATU, took lead and made a declaration of that sit-down industrial strike that they were into. Up to the time of its ending, Brother Philbert Baguma had indicated that he was really in firm grip and charge of the whole situation, him and his team. So at that level, it did not require a direct intervention of a national organization to come and take over, because UNAT was still in charge and it was still able to manage the whole thing. You can realize that it even led its delegation to go and have interface with the ministers, have interface with the prime minister, and about 2 interfaces with the president, until when they agreed on whatever they agreed on.
That is true, but where do you draw the line? Because like you've said, yes, NUT was in charge of the industrial action, but in terms of the bearings it had in society, because schools were closed, students were not going to school, and as I know, as NOTU, the emphasis is championing workers' rights. Sure. But what about the side of service provision? That as workers we have the duty to provide services, and they are not being provided at the time during the industrial action.
Now, because we did not see it as NOTU, I do not want to preempt what NOTU would have done as an organization. But as an individual, what UNAT was doing was the most appropriate thing. Because for us as core champions of workers' rights and welfare, and also reading from the laws that exist at hand, it is a very clear principle where you do have people doing exactly the same kind of work. They are supposed to be remunerated equally. The principle is equal pay for equal work. That principle is drawn from ILO conventions. It is drawn from the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It is clear in our constitution. It's also so clear in the Employment Act that governs us here. So to that level, when UNAT went for the industrial action, it was appreciated by us all. We wanted the government, and up to now we wish that the government can look at all workers who are doing exactly the same kind of work with fairness. If people are going to teach, and then you selectively identify one or a few of them under very unclear and unserious categories, and you say we want to treat this distinctly different from the others, then other than creating the goodwill that we think you would be aiming at, you are rather, for us we believe that it is rather causing more of demoralization. You and me know that we have 2 basic things, especially relating to teachers. It has largely been said that teachers are the lowest and the miserable of the miserable among the professional service. Even when we just get down here on the street and we are asking about the plight of a lawyer and a teacher, a doctor and a teacher, then you will always be told a teacher is the most miserable thing. So that in itself was a basis for which all our collective voice was enhanced teachers' welfare, such that they come to a reasonable and respectable level. So the idea of picking just one section out of those miserable and say we are going to overtreat so well these ones against the other was in itself bad. Then the other thing is the motivation. Research in education sector has provided that the literacy level of some of our learners, even up to secondary levels, is lacking. People go up to senior 3, up to senior 4 when they cannot do basic reading and writing. That in itself then means that there is really inefficiency in the teaching and learning process. So if we want to uplift that and make sure that people give in their best and be able to transform knowledge and be able to make the learners better learners, then we need to look at them holistically. You cannot say that when we want to make a better scientists, we then have to get just a small section of people. A small section of people whose foundation of reading is not well built will really not be able to lead you to what you're trying to say, that you need to get better scientists. That is why we are saying, let us remunerate collectively. Let us better the welfare of teachers collectively. And so what UNAT was standing for is something that we also embraced as trade union leaders at the level of NOTU.
Thank you on the clarity on that. So my question is then, is that the same stance that NOTU is going to maintain when it comes to the local government workers strike?
Of course, local government workers strike. Local government workers are simply re-echoing the long outstanding challenge. The challenge that we have is, first of all, the miserable pay of some categories of workers, and two, the unfairness. At the level of local governments, we do have some people doing, like, for example, the function of driving. A driver either of an ambulance or a certain car that belongs to a local government, earning about 200,000 shillings a month. No other benefits. But you also find another person employed with exactly the same skills, simply because he's driving under the armpits of Kampala Capital City Authority, simply because he's a driver under the establishment of Uganda Revenue Authority when he's earning 80 million shillings. That in itself is a preferential treatment. Driver. Same skills. But simply because this one is in Wakiso district and the other one is at KCCA, you realize that the other one has 80 million as a takeaway, this one has 200,000 shillings. So local government workers union is simply talking about the same, and when you really read that, you appreciate their background. And it is the purpose for which we say, well, we are inconvenienced because when they are not in offices, then we are not served. But at least they are standing for something right. And for as long as the government has not done deliberate effort and indicators to show that they are going to work on these issues that are being raised, then the option is the industrial action. And so we need to even give them all the due support for them to be able to go through this industrial action such that we can eventually get a better public service. You and me know that there are several offices you would move to, and somebody will outrightly tell you, let us pay. If you want that person outside his office, maybe you want him to come and inspect something, you want him to come and look at something outside his office, he would outrightly tell you, I do not have the fuel. That is coming simply because of this preferential kind of treatment. That is why we are saying, let us recognize our workers in the public sector as equal people for as long as we are doing exactly the same kind of thing.
So what kind of support are you planning to, is not to planning to give the Uganda Local Government Workers Union who are undergoing this industrial action?
The support world over that trade unions or that members of trade unions give is solidarity support. Solidarity support is in such a way that when a concern relates to you as an individual, we all own up and speak as if it is our problem. So this morning, just right now, I am here to say the cause for which our colleagues in the local government stand for is really a very genuine cause, and it's something we should all stand for. That in itself is so good. And it is a voice that is coming across all other unions. The colleagues in the public sector, they do have a forum that joins them called the Public Service International. Have already made a declaration to that effect, saying the voices that are being put forward by our colleagues in education sector, which is UNATU, the voices that are being put forward by our colleagues in the local government, which is now Uganda Local Government Workers Union, is really a genuine cause and it should be heard. And they have even prioritized it to push the Minister of Public Service to have those as immediate issues for discussion. So that is part of the solidarity. The other is, of course, the logistic. We may not be able to come on the TV here and outline each and every detail of what you not will do. Some of them are really underground support and facilitations. But at least the colleagues in local government should know that behind them is a bigger family of other workers who appreciate their cause. Because we know that once their cause is heard and worked on, it is in itself a process to better the entire public service. Because the voices of workers today is, let us regularize the working environment. We want to see a situation where people doing nearly same kind of work are remunerated almost in the same manner, without these disaggregations based on the sector where you're working, the district where we're working, for as long as we are all doing journalistic function and we are all having degrees and we are serving in equal amount of time, we are giving in our labor in equal amount of time, then wherever you are working, it should be that we are earning the same. The only difference can be in terms of allowance. that is topped onto you either because of the peculiar environment where where you are serving, but not those kind of sharp distinctions that we are seeing right now happening. Like I've just told you, somebody is a driver at KCCA and his pay is much more than the payment of 4 cows in local districts. That makes it very unclear and very demotivating.
That's baffling indeed, and that's why in this conversation concerning workers' rights, and one of the key pointers that you have pointed out is on equal pay and equal remuneration. But very quickly, in 1 minute or so, take as a General Secretary of Uganda Private Teachers Union, yes. What are the private teachers, what have they been saying about the strike by the teachers from government?
Of course, for us as teachers in private schools, first of all, I need to say that we are even much more worse off. But then we can have some better hope when we see a fair public service. Because when you graduate from school, many times private schools are nursery beds where people are training, building experience and so on. But the aspiration is to join the government service. So when we see a better remunerating public service, then we are satisfied. Therefore, our voice has been, first of all, uplift, improve the welfare of teachers across the board. Like I told you, even the public mock us that the miserable kind of professional paid people are teachers. So improve that such that that rhetoric dies off naturally. Then the other, improve fairly without those unnecessary discriminations. It really demotivates for us to be in the same school, same environment, engaged in the same equal amount of time, and then you bag 4 million. Then me, I take away
600,000. That is very sad indeed.
You're simply telling me that of the 4 hours I've been committing to the school, I should reduce and perhaps commit one, then use the other either to go and look for a border somewhere such that I can make a fair top up.
And the discussion here continues on issues at hand. For now, very quick breather, after which we continue this discussion and more, and we also get to read your comments and your questions.
Issues at hand on Family TV, enriching lives.
The breaking down of issues continues here on Issues at Hand, only on Church of Uganda Family TV. And the issue that we are breaking down today is workers' rights and the state of workers in Uganda, especially with the strikes that have been happening. And of course, my guest is a really good elder and leader in this field, and he can take us through this discussion. But if you want to be part of this discussion, please send us a WhatsApp message on 0787 447-684, and all your queries, especially if you are a worker out there, your query and your comment will be addressed adequately. Now, apart from equal pay, what are some of the other concerns that NOTU is championing in terms of fighting for workers' rights? What are the other things that workers struggle with, and discuss some of the rights that we as workers may not know that we have when it comes to what is prescribed under the law?
Now, like we earlier noted, our workers' organizations, our unions, and then NOTU as an organization are really frameworks or bodies that come from the bigger international thing, the ILO. So at the level of ILO, there is what we call decent work. There is a decent work agenda. So that decent work agenda has been customized in Uganda, and now here we have the National Decent Work Program. It is a program that defines what we do as trade unionists, and it has a lot of things. One of them is championing workers' rights and welfare at workplaces. But the other thing is issues of social security and social protection. So in there is for us to realize that even when you are aspiring for that better work environment, there is such a time when you can either naturally be disadvantaged and unable to continue working. So what is your fallback? What is your fallback in case you cannot do any more of your journalistic function? So then we do have the social security protection, the eventualities, the protection that can safeguard you in moments of eventualities that you cannot continue to work. Here we have the examples of the National Social Security Fund or National Social Security, and then the other frameworks. But it is a question, it is an answer that is answering to the question that what can happen to you in moments of eventualities. Those eventualities can be when you pass on and you're the breadwinner of your own house. What happens to those you have left behind? It also relates to issues of you could still be that youthful and energetic, but then you get that incapacitation that cannot permit you to do any more work. We are a border environment. Imagine you are coming very early in the morning hoping to reach here and do your program, but somehow along the way you're put down by a border and you cannot proceed here, maybe for the next 2 or 6 months. So what happens between now and then? So NOTU as an organization looks at that and start a discussion. And indeed we have had several discussions. One of them is that discussion that brought about the changes in the law that regulate NSSF, that you well know, but also other programs. We are
actually on NSSF, what role did NOTU play when it came to workers accessing their midterm benefits?
NOTU was the #1 stakeholder in that. Of course, as an NSSF is governed by an act of parliament. So whatever happens is eventually pronounced by the parliament and assented to by the president. But before the parliament says, yes, it should be this, it was not that generated whatever we aspired to have. It is not true that it proposed the midterm, not now I'm meaning the workers. It is the workers that propose the midterm access. It is the workers that proposes the convenience on how people should access it. It is workers that are proposing the efficiency in managing that NSSF. That is why today we have a board, and that board has also representation and the voices of the workers themselves, and so on and so forth. You see that? So under the ground, NOTU has been doing that. But even then, we are chanced that as workers, we do have representatives in parliament, and those are our very immediate conduits, our immediate contacts, who we go through, ask them to lobby their colleagues, and gladly we are happy that they did the work so well. They brought on board and appealed to the entire house, and that NSSF thing was passed with a lot of ease. So that is just one of the other them. We're also doing several other things. For example, you are at a workplace. Of course, at every time, an individual organization has a limit above which it cannot act. The public commonly know trade unions as bodies that are coming to ask for higher salaries for their pay. The trade union of these days is no longer looking at it in that way. We are so much concerned about efficiencies at work. And we are so committed to that, so we do continuous training of our workers. We want them to be better workers. Actually, right today as we speak, through our Ministry of Labor, Gender and Social Development, there is a program for enhancing productivity in the country. Maybe you have heard about this slogan, or that Ugandans workers are really lower performers, to the extent that where you have 5 workers, you would need an equivalent of 1 Kenyan to do the exact kind of work, especially in the hotel sector. It is something not proven, but at least it is widely said that in the hotel sector, where you will have 5 Ugandan workers, 1 Kenyan can do the equivalent of that, and about 4 Tanzanians or so can do exactly the same. That in itself means that either we are poor performers. So as trade unionists, we have come out to say we can be better paid when we are efficient. We can be better paid when we are much more productive. Because for as long as your enterprise has a limit of profitability, then there is a limit above which they cannot pay you. But if you are such versatile and you do your best and increase the profitability of your company, then clearly the margin within which you can also be paid higher salary is also increased. It increases. But also it is true that even when we are in a competitive working environment where we have higher levels of unemployment, there are some individuals among us who are selling like hot cake simply because of the proficiency, how proficient they are in their services, in their works. You find a station like this one, when they say we cannot afford to miss a worker X. Not because it's related to the director or so, but simply because they attach the skill, they attach the motivation, the productivity of that person. And even when that person says, I am leaving, except if you pay me this high, sometimes those companies or enterprises are able to move that far. So that is why now we have shifted our goal from this rudimentary asking of pay more, even when somebody is not doing the equivalent of the more, now to ensuring that our workers are really very efficient. And therefore, whoever is employing them does not even ever dream of terminating them, because you know, if I terminate really to get the equivalent, the replacement of this person is going to take me much. Yeah, so that is also the other thing. And indeed, we are doing that through regular education, training programs. We sometimes do through unions, or sometimes do directly organized by National Organization of Trade Unions, and so many other things. We are doing policy dialogue. I told you we have a voice at Parliament. We also have now, the workers now have voices in local governments. Each district of Uganda has a representation of 2 workers at the council. Me, myself, I am a representative at Wakiso district. So when we are there, we ensure that all issues that relate to policies that are going to come out in Wakiso have to be work-friendly. So what we only need is to get the feedback from the people we are representing and put them forward in the process of policy development, in the process of budgeting and all that.
And that's good to see that NOTU is sensitizing workers on our rights. And what we have to do in terms of, you mentioned very rightly, not just asking for an increase in salary, but proficiency in our work. Now, when it comes to the comments and questions, we have received them, and we're always glad to receive them here on Issues at Hand. And I'm going to start from one from your namesake, actually, Mr. Juma. And that's Juma Makumbi, who is from Buate. He says, the Private Teachers Union is another government arm that only promotes government agendas, fleecing teachers that it's a union that fights for their rights. What is the empirical evidence of their objectives in this industrial action? So your namesake does not
my
believe.
My namesake seems not to be aware of, maybe did not listen so well. We are not a government-founded, first of all, we are not a government-founded organization. We are not even a government member organization. Uganda Private Teachers Union is a trade union for teachers or for workers in private schools. So that in itself detaches us from any government thing. But all unions in Uganda are exclusively registered by the government under the Ministry of Labour, Gender and Social Development. So if we say that we are government arm because we are registered by the government, to that we are okay, we agree with him, because all unions are registered by one central authority, which is the government and the Ministry of Labour, Gender and Social Development. But at least our membership is composed of people who are working in private schools, and belonging to a union is a free choice. You choose to or not. So we are not fleecing. Rather, when somebody subscribes to us, we then pick their aspirations, and it is those members' aspirations that drive the agenda of the organization. Because we always have organ engagements, executive, bigger meetings, general members meetings, and through those organ engagements, we generate ideas that form the agenda. So you agree in the next 5 years, what are the issues that relate to us as workers in private schools? So whatever comes out as the issues is now what you foster as your flagship, your agenda, for the period of time that you're going to take.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. And then Seremba Stewart from Kamocha asks, what is the percentage rate of enrollment in NOTU versus the overall percentage of teachers and workers in Uganda?
Percentage rate of enrollment of NOTU. First of all, NOTU is an organization member-based. It does not affiliate individuals, it affiliates organizations. I said NOTU has 34 unions. But if you're asking about the percentage rate of teachers in relationship to the existing teachers union, then first of all is for me to tell you that there are more than 2 teachers union in the country. The biggest and the mother teacher union is Uganda National Teachers Union. Uganda National Teachers Union has, I think, around 180,000 teachers, around that. It has a proportionate percentage of over 60% of teachers in government, on government payroll. Over 60% are members of UNATU. Then for us as Uganda Private Teachers Union, we are also building our clout, but we must appreciate that the private schools come up every now and then, and also organizing them is such a bigger thing. Today you go to a school, enroll all the people, and the next day maybe the director terminates them all, or even the school itself closes up, and so you gain as you lose, you gain as you lose. So we are not yet as established as our sister unions, UNATU, but we are building, and we are building very steadily, and we know in the next short while we'll be able really to have a very bigger clout that we can pride in.
Then talking about the benefits of trade unions, Najema Prosi from Nansana asks, I have never heard of any joint venture activities or workshops to sensitize workers on benefits of being under such umbrellas. How do workers benefit from these unions?
Najemba, I don't know whether she belongs to a union. If she does not belong to a union, then it is the reason why she has not heard about any joint activity by NOTU, because NOTU serves its members. So when it is running a program, for example, sensitization and so on and so forth, if it is not a public forum that they are going to get to make a public rally, maybe they are going to organize it in a hotel or so, which are so much common, then it will always invite participation from its affiliates. That is why Najemba might miss out. Najemba and others might miss out. So the immediate avenue through which Najemba can see all this happening is for her to belong to any of her sector union or any union of her interest. I said there are over 34. So you just choose any one of those 34, be a member. Once you are a member, you automatically become a member of NOTU and you will come to see them. But also your individual sector union is supposed to do some of these things. And it is something that is very pertinent she is raising. Beyond the hotel engagements and all these selective engagements that we are doing, I think we should also, she's challenging us to go to the public, and indeed we shall do that. But Najemba should know that it becomes a little bit hard for us to go to the public in a way the politicians do, that maybe we are going to convene in an Nansana market and put a public address system and start speaking to people. Many times we use forums like now. So if I am on a TV and I'm telling you about a union, I'm telling you about NOTU, I'm telling you about the chance for you to join, then that is the sensitization that you should really appreciate and pick it up at that to belong to wherever you think you can be best placed.
And we thank Najemba Prosi, of course, for joining us on Issues at Hand and receiving that sensitization. Now, very quickly, what is your last word to workers out there concerning workers' rights and NOTU?
Last word to workers out there is that naturally in the world of work, workers are weak. But in unity, we gain insurmountable strength. So wherever you are, look at yourself as a person who wants to prosper, and your prosperity is in unity. Therefore, embrace that trade union of your sector. Embrace that trade union of your choice, and you use that trade union as a vehicle to put forward the voices, the aspirations that you have always been looking at for a better workplace. And to our employers, our bosses, is that there is a historical bad image that trade unions aim at promoting strikes, asking for higher pay, and so on and so forth. That is long gone. The trade union of these days is looking at how to make a worker a better worker who can profit himself, but importantly profit the enterprise where he or she works. So therefore, you are better off encouraging your staff to enroll into trade unionism, such that they can use the trade union to train on basic work ethics, issues of customer care, issues of productivity, issues of whatever. Sometimes now, for example, for us as teachers, we even go deep to ask some of our colleagues to get trainers and they come and give us refresher trainings of how to be a better teacher in the subject that you're occupying. So you realize that eventually you become a better teacher as an individual who can be marketed at that, but you're doing the best for purposes of the school where you are serving, and therefore the school gain out of that. So it is a call we make to our employers to facilitate workers to really join the union. As we wind up, allow me commiserate with my senior colleague, brother Owele Wilson. Owele Wilson lost his uncle, and I think they are still in Tororo, their home area. We want to say so sorry about that happening. The same thing happened to our sister Namsabi Rebecca from Uganda Textile and Allied Workers Union. We are so sorry about the loss of Mama. She lost her mother just a few days ago. We know it's a very painful experience. And all the workers who have gone through the same similar hard times, we want to say so sorry. And we ask that for us who are still living, God can give us really the grace to go through and serve to our best.
Yes, and we can serve to our best as workers, as being part of a family, that's a trade union. So thank you for joining us on Issues at Hand. God richly bless you.
The views expressed on this show are not necessarily those of this television or its management, but as of individuals as we hear them. Family TV, enriching lives.